Yo, what's up, people? I'm your host, Jay Will. This is Inspire God's People, where we balance faith and business to guide you to your purpose. This is episode 191. It's time to pivot. I'm going to be joined by Justin Carter. Look, man, I told Justin, if you want to call it virtually backstage, that there are times that I look selfishly forward to these interviews. He's a super impressive guy doing some amazing things. So, let me give the proper, I got some notes here. Let's give our proper introduction. He's the owner and operator of Pivot Business Services. Uh, Justin coaches CEOs, executives, and solopreneurs to grow and scale their businesses to six figures, and he also helps high performers develop incredible mindsets. So, if you're a high performer, an executive, a CEO, or a solopreneur, then I'm telling you, we're going to have some exciting information for you today. And exciting because you should be super passionate about receiving information from anyone who can add value to what you're doing. I know I am selfishly as we are continuing to build this platform of Inspire God's People. One of the things, if I'm being real with y'all, I kind of feel like I'm cheating because I get all these amazing, successful people to come on the show and I get to have a one-on-one conversation with them. And today, the goal is really for you out there who are looking to grow your business or to grow in business. And that is a really key, thing to point out is that, yes, if you're an entrepreneur, there's something in here for you today. But also, if you're a person that's trying to grow your career through corporate America, we're going to be able to talk about some things to help you as well. So if that's you, please sit back, relax, enjoy the inspiration, tell somebody about the show. As you know, we are fairly new to the YouTube, the video world, so I'm enjoying continuing to grow this platform and to get to know y'all in a new and different way where y'all can see my face and all that stuff. And also appreciate still the people who've been rocking with us on Apple Podcasts and Spotify for the past 4 years. So check out Inspire Guys People in all those places, including YouTube. But today, it's time to pivot, baby. When I come back, we're going to have Justin Carter here to kick it with us. And we all going to learn something. I'm looking forward to learning something. And hopefully you do as well.
Stop saying what you gonna do till you do what you said. When you opened that Bible, you knew what you read. You felt it deep in your soul. The promise did not expire. Be inspired. I can see beyond the tears you cry and the pain you feel. I saw every hill you had to climb just to make it here. When you say you ain't afraid to die, is it faith or fear?
And just like that, guys, people, we are back. Welcome to episode 191. It's time to pivot. I have my guest here, the owner and operator of Pivot Business Services, Justin Carter. What's up, bro? How you feeling today?
Man, good. Truly honor to be here. You just set them up for failure. You set me up for failure because I don't know if I can live up to those words, man. But truly, it is an honor to be here and be on your platform.
No, man, I'm excited to have you. Appreciate you kicking it with us today. I just want to say to the people out there, you have an amazing platform and the work that you do. What's super impressive to me is the presentation, of course, as we know, aesthetics, that's typically the thing, branding that gets people attention on the front end. But there's a lot of times where the branding is a front, right? Where it's kind of like people know how to edit. We all got access to these tools. But as I kick it to you, man, there's a lot of substance there. And, my goal today is really to learn and to dig as much as we possibly can to get some wisdom and some insight from you. And Justin, I like to start with who people were to find out who they are. So I want to jump into this conversation and understanding, like, who were you as a child? And you can go wherever you want in your childhood, whatever age. Some people go to elementary, middle school, some go to high school. Talk about your family life, whatever it may be. But if you could just give us a little idea before we jump into the business aspect of who you are, like, what was your childhood like? And who were you? What was your reputation as a kid growing up?
Yeah, man. So for me, I kind of grew up not necessarily in the best of neighborhood. My father wasn't necessarily present in my life. He went on to pass away when I was 12 years old. And man, for the most
Sorry to
part,
hear that.
like, yeah, no, it was it was actually one of the like now in life, I could say it was probably one of the best things that could happen to me. It sounds kind of weird, um, but yeah, man, grew up, and for me, like my mom, pretty much a single mom, and just grew up in a house full of women for real. Like grew up youngest of two sisters, and man, I was just like the football guy. Like for me, I started playing football at 7, and literally played all my life. And so for me, through just kind of the challenges of growing up, you know, seeing kind of some crazy stuff in inner city, not necessarily coming from the best background or the best start. For me, like football kept me out of spaces, and it kept me out of the wrong spaces at times. So that was me, man. Like I was just a kid, always outside. Man, like I remember, you know, drinking out of the
water
hose. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
like we used to get locked out in the summer. You know, you couldn't come in the house unless you was eating lunch, and
Oh,
that was
yeah.
it. You had to go right back outside.
Oh, yeah.
You know, playing flag football. You know, like just curve ball, like all that stuff, kickball, man, just like a normal 90s kid, and just outside having fun. And yeah, man, just trying to figure out life. I really didn't know what I grew up in until I kind of aged, and I'm like, wow, like I realized, here's the thing for me, I realized that I didn't know I was struggling until like I got to college, and I would tell people like what my favorite foods were, and they were all struggle meals. They're like, wait, you eat, that's your favorite food? And I'm like, like, oh wait, I was struggling then. So I was the one struggling. So,
all right. So try me though with one of those struggle meals. Like, what's an example of one of your
pork and beans
favorites?
and hot dogs. That's my meal. Like
Pork and beans, hot dogs.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. That went crazy.
Campbell's pork and beans with, you know, Sugardale. Not no name brand hot dog. It got to be like one of those grocery store brand hot dogs. But that's probably my favorite. Like that's my go-to now. Like I still one of my favorites.
So I, you know, where I'm probably different and I've gotten a little bougie is I haven't had it in quite some time. And the crazy thing about, you know, hot dogs and pork and beans is like, I don't even like beans.
Really?
But, yeah, hot dogs and pork and beans went crazy though. So it was kind of like I messed with that, but yeah, it's been a minute. I've gotten bougie and gone away from my roots as it relates to that. But yeah, I've had a little Vienna sausages used to go a little crazy as well for us. But
fried bologna sandwiches, you know.
Come on. Now, the fried bologna,
you gotta pop in the middle. You know what I'm saying? It ain't done until it got the little hump in the middle.
Goodness, dude, throw some mustard. And you know what's crazy?
White bread though.
Gotta be white bread. Bro, I'm talking about. I'll be real. Until I was about 30, if you would have hit me with some wheat bread, we was gonna have a problem. So.
Man.
With it. So no, that's cool, man. Like, you know, it's funny because I don't know if I ever really thought about it like that. From like just from the like you ain't even know you were struggling until you started describing what was on the menu for dinner. But what I love about what you said is kind of like a gift and a curse in a sense to me, is that you didn't know. And I'm pointing that out because I think in some regards it's good to not know, because you're just kind of grateful for life itself. But then as we get older, Justin, I talk to people now where I'm trying to convince them that there's better.
Wow.
And so it's like, yeah, it's dope that we didn't know. And I feel like God's grace is in that, where we could go through life and just be grateful. And then it's like, how do we like transition? I'm going super sidebar, so I don't want to throw the conversation.
Oh, this is good. This is good.
How do we transition from not knowing to knowing?
Yeah.
Like, what do you think about that?
Man, it's exposure. It's exposure. And I realize that it's not really taught. It's got to be caught. Like unless somebody catches the difference, it's got like you saying it is not gonna like, it doesn't really hit as well as it does when you see like when somebody that had grown up with some level of security or stability or even wealth, how they process through things, and then how you do it. For example, I'll give a quick example. I remember when I got to college for me that was like my first time being in environments of people that didn't come from social economically the places that I came from. And so I would talk to them and, you know, I'm like, hey, what are you guys doing for the holidays? Oh, like we're going to my grandfather's house. Like he owns 100 acres. And I'm like, 100 acres? I can't even calculate what does that really even mean? Like my city is that like that's a large, and I'm like, wait, so wow, that's like your family, like, and you know, and I would find out like, oh, so like I was the first generation college. Your great grandfather was the first generation college, and you know, like, and they would talk about something called an inheritance. I'm like, what the heck is an inheritance? Like, so that's, oh, so you're going to get money. So if your parents or your grandparents pass away, oh, so you're not going into debt to be here. Oh, so you got your grandparents will pay for you to be here. Wow. Like, so you don't fill out the same applications to get all the debt to be here
right.
Oh, okay. So I realized, I was like, well, we're not playing by the same game. Like we're playing a different game. And so for me, it wasn't until I began to have conversations and see that, yo, like we were in the same spaces, but we weren't in them the same. Like I was there going in debt and they were there with grandparents, you know, will or trust money, you know, like they had a entry into a corporate. They just needed the degree to get them to check the box. Like I didn't have references and recommendations to get into a job right out of college. I just seen like, oh, it's different now. Like we're playing different game. And I think that's for me what it started to show like, wow, like, okay, I didn't come from where I thought I did.
Yeah, that exposure piece is kind of crazy when you say it that way, because for me, I've had like several of those moments. They almost happen in phases for me where I'll get exposure to something that, like, you know how something make you do a double take and you have to kind of stop, like, wait a minute, did they just say what I said? I'm gonna give you, actually, one of them happened when I was about 15, 16 years old.
Okay.
Right. So I'm 15, 16 years old, and my stepmother was doing hair, and somehow, some way, she started doing the hair of one of the wives that played for the Pistons. So my man played for the Pistons. I live in the hood, but because my stepmom does his wife's hair, we are now going with her, right? I'm sure the first time she showed up by herself, right? And you know how it is. Once people start finding out, all of a sudden it's kind of like me, my cousin over there. There's about 5 or 6 of us.
The whole crew pulled up.
But what was crazy for me was, I'm at a player's house that plays for the Pistons, my hometown team, that I'm only used to seeing on TV.
Wow.
I'm chilling around. He had a son that was like maybe a year or two younger than me. So I'm chilling with his sons, but I'm getting exposure to all these minor things of like, this was not a star player, as an example.
Yeah.
And in his basement, there was a refrigerator full of Gatorade. And that was the moment, Justin, that I realized, oh, the stars aren't the only ones that get endorsement deals.
Wow.
You open a door in the basement, like a storage room. It was filled with one shoe brand. I don't remember if it was Reebok, Adidas. I don't know what it was. It wasn't Nike.
Yeah.
But the neighbors outside would just walk in and out of their basement and just grab Gatorades. And that was like a situation for me. When you think about, we all want to be the star. We all want to be Michael Jordan, but there's so much value in being Scottie Pippen.
100%.
But Scottie don't have commercials. Yeah. So like the dude who house I was at, he don't have commercials. Yeah. So I thought only the stars. So like, that's just one example of that. And I do agree with you on this idea that like exposure is an important part really of growth and success. But all right, a follow-up question to that. And again, like I'm going a little sidebar just because this is like such an intriguing topic to me. How do you get that exposure if you don't have it? Because I think what happens, Justin, is people from communities like us have legitimate reasons to complain. And you pointed out some of those legitimate disadvantages.
Yep.
And I know just from your story and your background, like, okay, you were able to flip that. By the grace of God, I was.
Yeah.
How do you get that if you don't already have it?
Man, I'm about to say something that's probably going to be really controversial.
I love it. Let's do it. Let's do it, man. Let's do it.
So here's my answer. I'm going to preface that where here's my answer for what and how it happened for me. White people got me in rooms that I couldn't get in.
Okay.
I had like if I look at my story and I look at how I got in certain rooms and how I got put on, it was people that didn't look like me that got me in certain rooms. And
Love it.
And here's the thing, like it wasn't even like, it's because some people were like, oh, that's tokenism, right? And people were trying to get you in certain rooms. And from my point of view, it didn't feel like that. It didn't feel like, oh, like I had something to contribute. I believe like there was something that I was really contributing to get in certain rooms. But when I say that is like, there was, I think so many people, they grow up with such a disdain for things that are not like them, that that energy transfers, and people that could be putting them on will not put them on because they know that you don't even like them for real. Like you grew up in the hood, or you grew up in an environment that didn't have, you didn't see certain things, and maybe you don't have experience with people that don't look like you, or people that don't come from where you come from. And so you don't know how to relate, or you don't know how to feel comfortable in those spaces. And bro, like if I'm honest, man, like some of my biggest like levels up has come not by a Black person. It hasn't come from somebody that came from where I came from, that grew up in the same community that I did, but it came from realizing that, man, there are gatekeepers out there that unless you're okay with getting uncomfortable and getting beyond what's natural to you and where you come from, you will never experience it. And so for me, as long as we're trying to like, and you could be like, as long as you're only trying to do it in the way that you think it should happen, and you're only trying to like go and increase in a way where you're not like okay to get uncomfortable. Like, yo, do you know any country artist? Like, do you have you like there's a whole world out there that you don't even know about. And so if you would just find yourself being curious in these spaces, at least for me, that's how I gained exposure. I gained exposure from people that didn't look like I did, letting me in rooms, and me having conversations with people that didn't look like I did. They were asking me questions, I was asking them questions. And that's, for me, those are like my biggest parts of exposure and levels up, was people that didn't look like me.
Well, I'll tell you, first off, the comment isn't that controversial for this show. So you kind of came to the right show for that comment. That is
I'm still trying to trade. I don't know, I don't know how far I could go. So I'm trying to still weigh on the toe.
You can talk like so I'm gonna be all the way real. Like, number one, we have quite a few white listeners on this show, and they kind of know like what I believe in, Justin, is, especially as a believer, I believe in reality. So as an example, reality to me, we just talked about the pork and beans and the hot dogs and coming from this community. And I think what happens in the world today is that so many of these realities have been politicized.
Yes.
That when you say it, it turns people off. But if we all just sit back and accept reality. So for a person, whether white or even Black people, whatever, if you grew up and you do have the inheritance and all that, we're not promoting a victim mentality, but there is a reality to the fact that when you go into culture shock, and if you Black, there is reality in what you said, Justin, and the fact that like you got to stop thinking that every time you cross a bridge or extend a hand or an olive branch that you a sellout, or you being fake or something like that. So and this is why your experience is so powerful. I was kicking it with someone today about an hour ago, and I don't think they'll mind me sharing this, and I'm not sharing who it is anyway, but there's a friend of mine. I always encourage him through growing his career, and he's a person that came from where we came from, and he's going through a lot of culture shock. And I told him that today at the entry level position, the problem is he's seeing the whole world through entry level. And it's not going to be, you almost are not even going to understand what I'm saying until you take the next jump. And I say that to say, Justin, one of my biggest challenges in mentoring people as it relates to business from where we're from, is getting them to even want to go to the next level, because the existing level is so comfortable, because it's all they know.
It's all, and people people can find solace and comfort in like brokenness. And so like, I don't know if you ever known anybody that's been in prison for a while, but
Yeah.
like there is a culture where people rep their prison. Like they will, I'm from such and such.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, the prison I grew up in. And what they're really saying is I've got pride in my bondage. What they're really saying is, man, I became to connect my identity, even though it was the bottom of the bottom, I connected my identity to that and I made that my home. And so people will see something, and what they're saying is that's not actually for me, that's for someone else. And I agree. I think one of the biggest challenges is for people to see, like, no, you can win at this level. And it doesn't make you a sellout. It doesn't make you a coon. It doesn't make you a lot of the things that culture will try to say you are as you're trying to literally change your legacy, change your family tree, and level up. And I think that's one of the biggest tricks of the enemy, man, is to get you to think that equality and sameness have to go together.
Like, I love that.
They don't have to go together. We can be equal without being the same. Like
100%.
There's nothing equality. We could be equal, but like you can listen to different music that I listen to. You can come from a different background I come from. And I think the minute that we're okay with getting outside of that, like if I were to give one like key area on any a level or amount of success I've had is I've been okay with being in rooms, being the minority. Like I've been okay being 1 of 1,000, 2 of 1,000. That's been a lot of my growth and success has been walking in rooms like that with context and culture. And like, not only did I know my world, but I knew their world, and I could be in both, and I can be agile enough to talk to the dude that's on the corner and talk to the guy that's at the head of the board table. Bruh, like that is dynamic. That realness that comes through, you know, I for me professionally, you know, sales was my thing. And that realness would come through. Like I would just have to break stuff down. Like, listen, man, I'm gonna just cut it to you straight.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not gonna hit you with the, you know, all the spin sell stuff and I'm not about to do the hoops and try to overcome objection. I'm just cut it to you real. And they're like, man, I appreciate that genuine. I appreciate you coming to me straight. And so I've been able to use that, man. And like, I think that to me, that's exposure. Exposure was, and I'm still being exposed. And that's the context. Like I'm being exposed to people that got boats. My people that come from, we don't have boats. I don't know anybody that got a boat. You know, I'm being exposed to
canoe, maybe not even that.
Utah, and learn what like Salt Lake City, Utah is like, and how people are winning at crazy levels. And you just like, oh wow, there's a huge abundant world that I'm just not aware of. And just because it's not your reality doesn't mean like you're inferior. It's just not your reality.
I love that. You said something, pride and bondage, and I want to unpack that a little bit because, and then I promise we're gonna get to like more of your story. I got some questions where we can learn more about what you've done in particular that I think is also gonna help people. But I think this is important because that pride and bondage, you know, last couple of years, I spent a lot of time like, you know, getting better about studying Black history. I read Frederick Douglass' autobiography. I read Up From Slavery by Booker T. Washington, one of my favorite books ever in the world. Is Up From Slavery, because I really wanted to understand. I love hearing it from the people who were there, because I think what happens is we romanticize things. The further you get away from something, even like you said, that pride and brokenness and bondage, you can romanticize what it was, but there's something key. When I listened to Up From Slavery by Booker T. Washington, one of the things that he wanted to do was build a school, right? And he needed the support of white people in order to do this, to build a school for colored people.
Yep.
And he successfully did that by being able to, in a genuine way, speak to both sides.
Yeah.
And that's how he was successful. But one of the things he came across, Justin, that's so interesting to me is that he came across when he had the school was about teaching you agriculture, teaching you how to work and all those things. By this time, you know, people started coming out of slavery. And the problem he had was that the former slaves did not want their children to do jobs that were based on labor, because to them, labor represented slavery. So they didn't even want to put them in that school. Why am I saying this? What I'm saying, one of the challenges in the Black community, in my opinion, is that the devil has tricked us into taking pride in things that kill us. So why is it that I'm keeping it real if I rap about killing Black people, if I rap about sleeping around and destroying homes, and that's keeping it real.
Right.
But if I go out and I diversify myself, so what I'm saying is, like, why can't we take pride in blessings? Like, we got to take pride in bondage. So I love that you talked about that, and I hope that doesn't go over people's head, man, because one of the things I'm trying to figure out is, like, how can we continue to further that where people understand? Like, just a sidebar, like, you know, my cousin got murdered this summer, 36 years old.
Wow, I'm sorry to hear that.
No, and thank you. And I'm saying that because to some people, this stuff is just a song or it's just a game. Like, I come from the East Side, 7 Mile in Detroit, and I ain't never been a thug. I tell people in a minute, like, it's harder to survive in this environment when you don't have a gun. Like, everybody brag about being a thug. It's like, it's a gang of y'all. It's 20 of y'all. Like, that's easy. The easiest thing you could do is get involved in that criminal activity. But imagine surviving that. Imagine going to war and you don't have a fatigue on. You ain't no, like, in surviving.
You're just a civilian out here. Yeah.
Come on, bro.
Yeah.
So anyway, man, I'm sorry to kind of go down that path, but you know, unless you got something else to say, we can jump into more of your story.
No, let's jump. Yeah, we good.
Hey, Bridget, how you doing? So this is what I want to talk about. I know that you have a degree in entrepreneurship, which was super interesting to me. They didn't, like, at my university, they didn't have that degree. I probably would have majored in that, but it's kind of a two-part question. I was curious, what is the earliest that you can actually remember, like, thinking, like, I want to own a business? And then, like, let's start there. Like, was entrepreneurship something that somebody would have looked at you as a kid and saw, or like, you know, how far back does it go?
Honestly, man, like, I wasn't, like, I know a lot of people are like, yo, I was selling snacks out my book bag in 5th grade, and I was selling lemonade on the summers.
Yeah.
I wasn't really doing that kind of stuff. Again, for me, I was all like football and all that kind of stuff. For me, it was like it was in college. It really wasn't until college. And I was taking a major. I started off with computer technology, and I liked it. I'm very into computers. I'm very into tech. But as I started to go down to coursework, I just really, I couldn't see myself standing behind a computer programming all day. Like, that just wasn't me. And none of the other degrees really fit me. Like, I was trying to find, I was like, that's not, but entrepreneurship stood out to me, man. Like, it just, and when I took the first class, so for me, I was still kind of stumbling and even knowing if I really wanted to go that path. And I was like, let me take, it was like Intro to Entrepreneurship or something like that.
Yeah.
And man, I took the first class and it changed my life. It was like the first time in college that I felt that I was learning something that I could use outside of college. It was like, wow, this is really helped. Like, we read the book, Who Moved My Cheese? That was like our first book. I don't know if you ever read that book.
I have not read that one.
Phenomenal book. But pretty much the book talks about how the cheese is always moving. Pretty much the story is there's 2 mice and the cheese was in the same place every day. And they used to go out, get the cheese, go back home, call it a day. And they got so used to going to get the cheese that they weren't realizing the cheese was getting smaller and smaller and smaller. So one day they went out and the cheese was gone. One of the mice was like, I'm gonna keep showing here. The cheese has got to be able to show up. Like, it's gonna show up at some point in time. We just gotta keep coming back and it's gonna come here. The other mouse was like, man, somebody, maybe I should go, maybe it's moved. Maybe somebody moved the cheese. And the mouse just, and like, it pretty much represented 2 paths of thought. There's some people that they don't pivot enough. Like, that's also kind of like my pivot story. It's like they don't pivot enough in life, and they try to go put new wine in old wineskins, right? Like, they try to, man, let me just keep doing what I did last year. Let me keep doing what I've done for the last 5-10 years. And they don't pivot enough to go where the cheese is moving. And like, that was our first book that we read. In that book, like, opened up, I was like, okay, this is. And then we just kept learning. Like, I was learning about business. We had successful entrepreneurs come into our class telling us how they grew $1 million businesses. And like, it was one of those things that, man, once I tapped in, I was like, okay, this is it. The rest was history, really.
That's dope. That's dope. And like, I think it's funny, like just how much a book can change our lives. Like I love reading because of that. Like most of the change that's happened in my life, starting with the Bible, is like reading. Like I
Yeah.
read something and it was intriguing and beautiful and challenging. So that's cool. Like you mentioned, Pivot. Obviously, you own and operate Pivot Business Services.
Yeah.
What does it really mean? Just see, since you mentioned it, like, what does it really mean for someone to pivot? And maybe what are the obstacles or challenges in our lives that is stopping us from pivoting?
Yeah, man. So just kind of background story. I came up with Pivot really on the backside of a business that didn't go the way that I thought it would go. And essentially had a bunch of success in real estate. And really, business got to a point where we were growing really fast. We had a 7-figure portfolio, and there was a couple bad deals that just really, like, it was like one domino that fell that affected a bunch of other dominoes. And I kind of found myself almost needing to start over. And what killed me was I knew that I was better than the results that I was in. Like, I knew that I was actually way better than the money that I had, the disappointment that I experienced. And man, I was just like in this point of, man, praying and thinking like, man, how do I get up from here? Because like, and this, I'm giving you in like a couple seconds what happened over probably 2 to 3 years of like,
Okay.
and this business didn't go the way that I thought it would. And now having to pick myself up, and it took me like a year and a half, maybe almost 2 years to really like get back in the game of entrepreneurship, really. And man, I just began to get this heart and passion for it, like to get back on the horse, like to really get back in the game. And I was thinking like, man, what can I do from here? Like, what can I use with what I've got? And man, I'll tell you, like, God just dropped the word pivot on me, like something crazy. And to me, and this is I talk about this in the podcast, but I say that life is all about the pivots, and those who decide to make the pivots decide to become successful. And if I'm honest with myself, every level of success that I've had has come on the backside of a pivot. It's like every win was on the backside of a loss. Every mountaintop was on the backside of a valley. And if I never want to go through the valleys, I'll always forgo the mountaintops. And if I also think that life has to be constant, I'll miss the opportunities to pivot. Like, to me, pivot sometimes means you quit. Like, I know it's not a sexy topic. A lot of people are like, yo, never be a quitter. I'm not that. Like, I will tell my son the minute that something, like, I'm all about the pivots. Like, the minute that something ain't sitting right with you, quit and change and go another direction. Because a lot of people, they stay in stuff, relationships, jobs, locations, way too long for the sake of just sticking it out, for the sake of not being a sellout, for the sake of wanting to finish. And like, for me, all of my successes have come on my ability just to pivot, knowing like, man, you know what, you can make that adjustment and you don't have to wait. Like, you could do it now. Like, you can make the decision today to live a completely different life, have completely different results. You don't have to wait till a new year. You don't have to wait till the first of the month. You don't have to wait till your cousin come up from out of town. You can make the decision now. And so it's really that mentality that, man, life is all about the pivots. And the minute that you are okay with making them, the closer you'll be to success and having everything you desire.
Man, it's crazy because, I don't think you know much about my background at all, which is funny. You just described a lot of it. I had a fashion brand, Bellwether Fashion, obviously in the back, right there is one of my hats that Bellwether. I mean, I think I ended that business maybe in 2017, 2016. I did it for about 4 years. Christian rapper, did that for, probably for 10 years straight into the pandemic. I put out a project every year.
Wow.
The reason I'm saying that, because as you were talking, it's like, if someone were to ask me, about how I obtain any level of my success, it is exactly what you have described. With the fashion business, I'll tell you this. And I'm saying this because I love giving practical examples on this show. What's up, Jen? How you doing? Yep, there you go. See, Jen is a faithful, long-time listener. I had an episode talking about failing fast. because sometimes we waste too much time trying to do something that's already dead. And I had the fashion business, Justin, and what happened was Instagram, if you go back, Instagram 2013, 2014, that's pre-algorithm. I
Yeah,
could post a hat or a shirt and literally within minutes have orders across the country.
it's crazy.
Florida, Texas, Cali, the Netherlands, Africa. I have sent clothes and fashion everywhere. And so it was a great few years of that. Instagram inserted the algorithm, and I remember being devastated because my business was so dependent on online, and I wasn't prepared for it in all honesty. So I'm not blaming
Right.
anyone, but I got to this point where I had spent like 4 years doing this. I was really deep in it. My wife supported it, but I was kind of like, long term, I don't see how this is going to deliver. Like, there's a certain amount of revenue for me, or like, I'm like, I don't think this is going to deliver that. And I made a pivot. So,
Yeah.
to your point, man, sometimes that next thing is better than the thing we're holding on to, but you will never actually even experience it until you pivot.
Yeah, you would never, and that's Bishop Jake says it like this. He talked about a story of his son, and his son was trying to figure out like what he would do next in life. And his son was kind of like struggling with it because he's like, Dad, like, what if this isn't the thing though? Like, what if this isn't the thing that God has called me to? And he said, son, if this isn't the thing, it'll be the thing that leads you to the thing. And I
I
think
love it.
so often we just don't take action. Like, we stay in inaction and we just sit and we're like, all right, God, like, give me a vision, give me a sign, show me the way. And he's like, yeah, you got to do the thing. And there, it might not be like your first business might not be the one that I had for you, but it's going to be the business that leads you to the business that I have for you. Like, the first relationship might not be the one that I got for you, but it's going to be the relationship that leads you to the relationship that I've got for you. And if we never are okay with making those pivots, we will hold on to things way too long. And that's just the piece, man, is I try to have to make sure I tell myself continually that, Justin, like, what pivot can you make? How do you make a pivot? Like, if I'm honest, it's a way, it's a mindset, right? Like, it's a way of thinking. It's a, hey, I'm never out of the game. Like, I can always make an adjustment. I can always shift. It's like, it's a mindset that says, okay, I know what I don't have, but what do I have? I know what I lost, but what did I gain? I know who I don't have, but who do I have? I know the amount of money I don't have, but what can I do with the money that I've got? Like, it's always looking for that next lane, like that next pivot, that next adjustment. And like, that's really just that's my message to the world. It's like, man, like, we cannot be afraid to make the pivots. That literally everything that you probably are desiring that you don't have right now is on the opposite side of a pivot you've yet to make. And often that pivot is very clear to us. We know, you knew 3 years ago that you should have been left and did something else. You should have been relocated. God put that vision in you that, yo, you're supposed to travel somewhere and do this, but you just didn't do it. And it's like, that's the permission. It's like always giving people the permission. Yo, you can never, like, you can always be okay making the pivots, and they'll take care of you.
It in a lot of ways, it sounds like a pivot mindset is really a mindset of gratefulness.
Mm,
Like, because when you talked
wow.
about this idea of like, yeah, I know what I lost, but what can I gain? What did
Yeah.
I gain? Even when you talked earlier, you had just kind of briefly mentioned your father passing when you were 12, and I don't know if you could touch back on that a little bit. You
Yeah.
said that was one of the best things that ever could have happened, and obviously that's from the outside looking in, um, something so um, presumably tragic and emotional. Just to even hear you be able to say it with that type of um, you know, thought process and perspective, I would love to hear a little more about that.
Yeah, yeah. So it's a really a mindset thing. So here's how I think about it is I'm committed to living a life wide open. And if I'm committed to living that life wide open, if I'm committed to living the life that God has called me to live, I've got to know when I'm in purpose and when I'm out of purpose. And I feel 100% that I'm in purpose, that what I'm doing now and that the life that I have is the life that God desired for me to have. So it's not just my father dying was the best thing that could have happened to me. Every single thing that has happened in my life is the absolute best thing that could have happened to me. If it wasn't, it would have happened. Like everything that has happened to me, good, what people would consider good, what people would consider bad, all of it is the best. This is really just coming to me now, by the way, but all of it is the absolute best thing that could have happened to me. And so that's really what I mean when I say it's the best thing, in that I don't know what other life I would have had, but I just know that this is the best one. Like I don't know what my life would have been like with my father, but if that was the best one, God would have kept my father here. And so I've got faith that wasn't my best life, that the one I'm in now is my best life. And so for me, it was tough, growing up and, just hearing legacy and hearing who he was as a person. And as you continue to grow and mature and develop, they're like, man, you're just like your dad. Or my mom be like, man, you just like your dad in that way. Or you sound just like him. Or when you wear that hat, you look just like him. And you bump into that. I bump into that all the time. But I think for me, it's being okay, again, knowing like, man, this is God's best. And I've just given my life to the fact that I don't know what's best for me. And I serve a God who I believe does. If I really say I serve that God, I must also say that I know that everything he has allowed to happen in my life didn't happen to me, it happened for me. And so it's like, again, it's kind of that pivot mindset. It's like, man, okay, this is what I've got. This is clearly the best thing for me. And sometimes we don't later learn that in life. I know 100% that the father that I am today is because I didn't have my father. Like the way that I hug my children, the way that I look at them, the way that I have thoughts about, man, like I wonder how my dad was when I was this age. Or did I get the same kind of hugs that I'm giving my son? Did I get those just that awareness? I wouldn't have had that had my father been there. Had my father been a great dad, yeah, there probably been other things I would have had. But the person that I am today, I just wouldn't be it. I wouldn't have the kind of passion, the fire that I've got. I experienced a lot of like challenge early in life. And I think that propelled me like in my college years, because when people were like, for them, they failed a college test and all hell had broke loose. And I'm just like, come on, man. Like this made you a bad day. Like you a bad day because of that. Like, you don't understand. I just seen my cousin get shot, or like I just had a gun pointed in my face like 3 weeks ago. That was a bad day. And so it was all context. But I think when I think through it, again, I go back to like, man, whatever God allowed, I just believe is God's best.
I think that is powerful. Because it's like the anti-victim mentality is really what I hear.
Yeah.
Because, and this is why I'm such a realist. In reality, we all have problems, we all have issues, and even when we come from the same communities, let's be real, like this
100%.
is my problem with these monolithic group titles that they try to put on us all, and all Black people the same, all white people the same. We are not. Culturally, yeah, you come from a certain place, there are a lot of similarities,
right?
But when you allow yourself to believe that extreme through and through, you also kind of disrespect what other people have went through. And like the victim mentality would give you every reason, losing your father at the age of 12, to give up, to become a criminal, to not try or do your best. And what I love about what you describe, which I believe is the Christian way, I believe the Christian way, based on the Bible and what I read in biblical principles, is that we should be empathetic, which is essentially the ability to put yourself in someone else's shoes. Yeah. So we should not be dismissive of people's issues and problems that are different than us. But we also should not elevate our own problems, because the way I view it is that I always tell people, if you change one thing, you change everything. And then the other thing is that, what can you name me that Jesus going to the cross was not powerful enough to overcome? There is nothing. So the victim mentality really elevates our own problems above Christ dying on the cross.
You never win from it.
Go ahead.
Yeah, like you don't win from it. Like I just had a coaching client session, like literally right before here. And the homework that I gave this client was write down everything that is like not working, like everything that you just aren't satisfied and you just don't like in your life. Write that down, and right next to it, I want you to be very detailed on how it's all your fault. And she was like, what kind of assignment is this? Right?
Yeah.
Like, what are you? And I said, if you don't learn to always look for fault in things, you will miss opportunities of growth. And so you realize that often this is an extreme way. I'm not saying that everybody can do this. This is like coaching, like very intense and with support and all that kind of stuff. But pretty much the exercise was for her to be aggressively looking for ways to take ownership, because when you aggressively look for ways to take ownership, you aggressively find ways to develop yourself and find like my grandma used to say, boy, there's still some meat on that bone.
Yeah.
Like you look for the meat on the bone. Like it's like, yo, I know you think that was such a bad scenario and that it was all their fault. And looking from the outside, yes, absolutely, that was all theirs. But is there anything that you could find that could be potentially your fault? Because if you could find a way to blame yourself on things, you now put yourself back into control. And now you say, man, if this was my fault, I can change this. And here's the thing, when it's your fault on the negative, it can also be your fault on the positive. It's not one-sided. It's like, yeah, everything that bad, man, that's my fault. I take that. I learned that in football. I learned like, yo, when you messed up on a play, you called that. My bad, y'all. That's me. My bad. Like you took ownership of the ball being dropped, or you missing a tackle. But then when you won, oh, we're gonna celebrate in the end zone. Like we're gonna turn up.
Yeah.
And so it's like, but you can't have one without the other. Like you can't not say, yo, I take that, that's my bad, and then always celebrate. It's like, no. Like that's not how we move. And I think if we treat our lives like that, man, we find so many ways that we can grow and get better.
Ownership and accountability. All right, we got a couple minutes, so I didn't get
know,
everything
man.
I wanted
this
to.
Is so good.
I gotta choose one. Man, I got a few more. This is.
Go ahead. No, you can go ahead. I'm good. You can go ahead.
You sure, bro?
Yeah, you can go ahead.
Okay, I'm only going with 10 minutes, 10 extra minutes, and I'll get you out of here. Thank you so much. Because you said so much dope stuff. I'm like, I wanna check. I want to dig into that. Like, so one of the things that, this conversation around ownership and accountability really makes me think about, like, I know you have a lot of experience in corporate America, right? And this show is about faith in business. And some folks listening to this show are trying to grow a career. Like I said, the person I was talking to today is trying to figure out, like, just entering corporate America, entry level, coming from where we come from, culture shock. I've been there, still in some ways, always put myself in uncomfortable situations. Like, what role has corporate America played in shaping you into the entrepreneur that you are today? And then I want to know from there, what advice you would give someone who's at the starting point in corporate America, maybe rough around the edges, and wants to grow their career.
Man, corporate America has been everything for me. Like that, to me, that's been my training ground. I've got the ability to learn on other people's dime. I got the ability to get trained on how to be in big corporate business and learn systems and learn structure and learn onboarding. And like, I got to learn these kind of things. But the biggest thing that I would say though is, and I'm a quick story. When I first graduated college, I took a job at HP, Hewlett Packard, moved out to California, and it was me, and it was like a group, it was a group of 18 of us, right? And we own, like, it's a big corporate campus. It's like 2,000-3,000 people working at that campus, cafeteria, games. It's like everything you see on TV, like in Silicon Valley. It's all that, right? We get there, and it's us, me, and like 17 other students that just graduated college. We all green, and they came from way bigger colleges than me, like Alabama, Clemson, like way bigger schools. And our manager walks up to us, and he said, "You are all sheep, but there's probably one, maybe two wolves among you." And we just like, this is day one. Like, we're in the lobby still. We getting our badges, we taking our photos to put on our badge type deal.
Yeah.
And he's like, all of you are sheep. And there's probably one or two wolves among you. And I'm trying to find the wolf. And like, this wasn't even like You would think this was like Wolf of Wall Street, like we cold calling and banging on doors. Like this wasn't even like that. Like we were selling technology solutions to companies that already had our product. It was just like very farmer like. But I'll never forget. It was me and two other black guys, and the hiring manager was a white guy. And he pulled us aside like day 2 or 3. We're in the middle of training. He pulls us out of training. And he said, "Hey guys, I'm not going to act like I don't see your reality." And I'm just like, what are you talking about? And he said, "I know that there's not many people that look like you guys here. I realize that." And he's like, "There's nothing that I personally can do to change that." He said, "But what I can do is I can connect you with people that look like you that are in upper leadership so you can see that you can win here too." White guy. Don't know me from a blade of grass in Arkansas.
Wow.
Seen like, man, these guys, they stick out like a sore thumb. And again, this is a campus of 2,000 people. There's probably like 5 black people on the entire campus, right?
Wow.
And so like that was one of my first entry level corporate experiences where it's like, welcome to corporate, like welcome to this world. And what it showed me that like when we talk about, you know, like, hey, people have opened up doors for me, like have introduced themselves to open up doors. Not even I asked and they opened. So for me, I think it's extremely important because there's a lot of things that people run from in today's day and age. I think there's a lot of discipline and structure that people run from when they run from a job, and they think that they don't have to have it when they start a business.
Ooh.
And so people are like, "Oh, I didn't like that job." What they really were saying is like, "I didn't like being on time. And I used to get written up every time that I was late." And then I had this bad relationship with my boss because he was just annoyed that I was always late, but I used it as, oh, like they don't want me to win. It's like, no. You're just not disciplined to be on time, or you're just not a high performer. And so then we roll that into business. And so I would say whoever is listening, if that's you, kill it in corporate, kill it and level up and do as much as you possibly can. Because if you can do that, now you're able to transition those skills into an entrepreneurial endeavor and whatever source. And here's the thing that you realize, at least in my experience, is the higher that you would climb within the organization, the more free time and the more time control I got over my schedule. And so when I began to develop people, I wasn't in sales calls every day. And I was just kind of waiting back to make sure people were good, answering the phones, but I didn't have to be in front of my computer typing all day. And so now with that time freedom, I got to invest in my business. I got to be a little bit more flexible. And so you get to the point where if you kill it corporately, if you kill in your corporate thing, you can, there's a book, pretty much the book talks about like why you shouldn't follow your passion. I can give you the reference. But the book talks about like why you shouldn't follow your passion, why following your passion isn't a good strategy for success. And what he's really saying, what is a better strategy, because your passions change. What's a better strategy is becoming the top 1% and becoming really good at something rare and valuable. And now when you become good at something rare and valuable, you become the top 1% and you can name your price. Like everybody in the NFL, everybody in NBA, everybody in corporate America that's top 1% in their industry, they name their price. They name their flexibility. They name their schedule because they're the top 1%. And so that would be my advice is kill it there. And then you can eventually transition, but don't run from corporate because you're not disciplined, because you don't have skills and you haven't built the resources necessary to jump into running a business.
You know what that made me think about? I've checked out a lot of your content on Instagram, which, everybody check out Justin on Instagram. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, it'll be in the description of the show. It's @_Justin Carter. My favorite video that you have on Instagram is actually one of the pinned videos, so it's not hard to find. It was about winging it. And I feel like it made me think as you were talking about that, like some people want to be an entrepreneur because they want to wing it. And they think that like the structure of corporate and having a job frustrates them. And they think by going to wing it, that it's going to lead to success. But
they can win with that.
Yeah. It's like, no, you don't get it. Like if you listen to any successful business person or entrepreneur, whether they are a CEO or a founder or, you know, an entrepreneur, whatever it may be, like what I found is like, oh, the principles are the same. Like it is the same principles that drive a person to the top of corporate
Yep.
as it does to be a successful entrepreneur.
It
And
is.
if you run from those principles, you're not going to become successful. So can you talk a little bit like with that video, it just, if you could just summarize the idea of like why winging it is not a strategy for success?
Yeah, like I think most people wing life. Like most people, like they just wing it. Like they don't have, and really the like the push that I was trying to get people to realize was that you don't have to go throughout life without a model or example or being connected with people that have won in the areas that you are pursuing. Especially in 2023, there's so many consultants out there, coaches out there, mentors out there, people that are willing to give you resources and information to help you win. And what I pretty much tell people is like, if you're winging it, what you're really telling me is you're committed to building a small business. Like if you're winging it, what you're really saying is I'm committed to this thing staying small, and I'm committed to this only being me. Because when you are really serious about growth and success, you realize that, man, there's not really one person that builds a business. And what most people do is they call what they have a business, but it's really they just own a job. And if you're going to own a job, it's super risky. You might as well go and work a job, because owning a job, you don't get the benefits, you don't get the pay, you're gonna work way more hours. So if you're gonna trade hours for dollars like that, you might as well just go and work. You might as well go and get a job. But if you're really about building a business, you got to have systems. You got to have, you got to have like SOPs. You got to have like processes that identify what good looks like. You got to have a company culture. You got to have a mission that helps drive the people that are within your business. It don't just come from like, oh, like what today I feel like this. Like, no, when you got people on payroll and you got staff, they need a mission that they can go run behind. They need a reason why they should continue to show up to work tomorrow. And so winging it never really gets people where they want to go long term. You might be able to have a pocket of success, but studies show like it's not going to be scalable. And the minute that you get to a point where you're now overwhelmed, it'll either die because you can't scale, or you'll begin to frustrate people as you try to bring it to the business because you just really been winging it. Like nobody wants to work under a winging environment.
I love it. All right. So before we get you out of here, Justin, appreciate you staying a little overtime with us.
Of course.
You know, you talked earlier about, you know, having your first business and growing it from zero to having $1 million in assets and having some failures with that business. And you talked about, you know, why you started your Pivot Business Services. So can you tell us now, just before you get out of here, like, tell us, like, what are you doing? I know you have the Pivot Mindset podcast, which is also on YouTube as well. And I definitely recommend the listeners go and check out the Pivot Mindset podcast. But can you just tell us a little bit about the podcast and, you know, other things you're doing in business today and how people can stay in touch with you and find out what you have coming next?
Yeah. So Pivot Business Services is really my implementation of really helping people live pivoted lives. And what that for me looks like is being able to monetize their purpose. And so for me, I specifically work with Christian entrepreneurs who are looking to build 6-figure plus businesses online. And so really it's using what I learned and what I experienced by the growth and failures that I've had in business and being able to help people shortcut, take the fast lane, like in a good way, like being able to miss some of those like steps and being able to skip the process in a sense of they get to leverage my experience. And I help entrepreneurs, right? And so for me, it's all about empowering, helping entrepreneurs make those pivots. What I realize is that there's a hunger, especially in the Christian community, of people that really want to build businesses. I believe that entrepreneurship is a God thing. In the Bible, you don't see workers, you see slaves, or you see business owners. There was no in between. And yes, culturally, we live in a different culture. And so, yes, you've got a working class economy, But I think everybody, no matter what you do, you should have something that you own. You should, everybody, no matter what job you at work, you should have a piece of this pie that's yours that can be passed down. That you should have something that you're building. And so that's what I help people do. Is I help people monetize their purpose. Everybody has a purpose, and I believe that in the Bible is true that people monetize their purpose in the Bible. Biblically, when people like they monetize their skill set, they monetize their gifting. And so what I want to do is I help people monetize their gifting. And so that's pretty much what we do. You know, that's displayed within our podcast, and really knowing that when it comes to building business, that it really starts at the mind level. We can give you strategy, we can give you structure, but like if you don't have the mindset, everything else is rooted on that. And so I really try to help people first make the pivots mentally before they can start to see the pivots financially, emotionally, and spiritually in their lives.
I love it. Justin, one last thing before we get out of here. I have to get to this. We only got a minute, but
yeah.
When we were talking last week, we connected. And usually, man, I'm gonna be real. You know, usually when I tell people that I met my wife and we were, you know, teenagers, you know, usually it's kind of like, you know, you kind of trump them a little bit, and then your response kind of threw me off about when you met your wife or how you met your wife. So, just because I want you to, you know, look, you a podcaster, you a business person. I know how this go. I want to make sure your wife get, you know what I mean? I'm setting you up 100%. To show your wife some love. But also, can you just talk to us a little bit about when you met your wife, where you met your wife? I think it's a cool dynamic.
Yeah, man. So like my wife, man, we met in middle school. We met in the 8th grade. So we dated in the 8th grade. And like we literally had the same middle school graduation, high school graduation, and college graduation, like day. Like graduated same day, middle school, high school, and college together. And man, it's special because like what I've been able to be blessed by is the cheat code of my wife. Hands down, the pivots that I've been able to make have been because she supported me in those processes. And like she's wild for thinking, like being okay with some of the pivots we've made. Like she just always supported it though. And so she's seen the bottom, like she knows what the bottom feels like. And I'm glad that I can show her this journey to the top because for me, like that's been my cheat code. Like I know I couldn't have done this without her. And that like I think today in our generation, there's some people that think that it's like more advantageous to win by themselves. And I'm not saying that you can't, but like for me and my story is like my wife came and truly has been a help me. Like the only reason why I'm on this podcast right now is because my wife is putting our kids down to sleep. Like she's bathing them. You know, I had a 15-minute gap in my schedule today. I was able to step out, chomp down some food that she made for me, have my plate already ready, and so I can get back to it. And so like she's support. She's like really helps me. And so that's my cheat code. Like somebody say like, yo, how do you do all this? I'm like, yo, the wife that I got allows me to be fully locked in and to really commit myself, shut my door and put in the work. And I can't thank her more for that.
Man, shout out to your wife. Shout out to wives like that. My wife is on that same vibe. And like
100%.
What I would say is like, I think what's interesting looking at how people think today is just simply like all those things in today's society could be flipped as negative.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's so confusing to me because my wife, when you were with somebody through ups and downs in these different phases of life, it's been times that y'all both have had to be there for each other in different ways. But then most importantly, I think she knows who she's doing that for. Man. And maybe for some people, you can't fathom the idea of meeting a dude today and cooking food from all of these things sound negative, but it's like, no, like she know this is the dude from 8th grade, from 12th grade, from so it's, man, I don't know. I know if a person is single out there and they, you know, an adult, it's nothing you can do. You can't go back to 8th grade or high school. But as much as there are some challenges with that stuff, there are some, like you said, some cheat codes where I kind of feel like, oh, like I be hearing people or seeing people post things and I'm like, oh, we really just don't. That's not a thing in my marriage.
Yeah, it's not even. Yeah. And like, that's the piece, man, where you skip stuff. Like I know stages in my life, I was able to kind of just skip them because I had her. And again, it's not to say like my marriage has not been perfect at all.
Oh no, yeah, we not
And I
definitely
think,
neither one of us saying that.
yeah, and it's like one of those where the hard part is for us, it was like, and I think we talked about it before, was you literally are maturing together. And so, and it's not just like a slow, gradual maturation. It's a very fast maturation. Like adults have very fast, accelerated seasons of growth and then like slower seasons of growth. From like most adults, from like 30 to 40, there's not a lot of like very fast growth, but like from 12 to 25, you going through every single thing
That's
that like
facts.
all at once. And so for us to be together throughout that time, like you learn, you grow, she's seen the worst of me. I've seen the worst of her. Like she's seen the best of me. I've seen and I think I know I wouldn't have had that with somebody else that would have come to me now or something like that. I can imagine what that process would have been like, to know like, hey, I don't know why they're here, if they're really here for the right intentions, if they
Yeah,
can really build with me. Like she's shown me that we went from, again, millions of dollars to, hey, like our house might get foreclosed on. Like
Ooh.
we went from one extreme to the other.
And she was there.
They're like, all right, cool. Do I gotta work? What I gotta do? And it's like, yeah, man, like you can't forgo that. That's just too much.
Justin, look, man, I want to be respectful of your time and your busy day. Thank you so much for taking a little extra time with us today. Definitely want to do this again. Please do stay in touch, man. Like on a serious level, stay in touch. Don't hesitate to reach out to me for anything. I actually won't do the same. I mean, I will do the same, and I'm not gonna hesitate to say what's up or reach out to you. Definitely I consider it a privilege to have met you. And thank you for everything you're doing. Everybody, please check out Justin's podcast, the Pivot Mindset Podcast. Check him out on Instagram @ Justin Carter. Justin, you have an amazing night. Tell your wife we said thank you for taking care of business so you can be on Inspire God's People.
All right, my man. Peace. I'll see you later.
All right. See you. God's people, man. That was Justin Carter. Wow. Look, man. It is such a blessing. Hold on, let me take a sip of this because I gotta take a sip of this drink, this lemonade, because I got a lot to say after that interview. It was an amazing time. Okay, guys, people. So there's so much I want to unpack from today's interview with Justin. Hopefully y'all check him out. Again, the information will be in the description of the show if you're listening afterwards, YouTube, Apple Podcast, Spotify. Justin talked about that last thing. I don't want to overlook that last thing. He said you go from millions of dollars, right, to nothing. And he talked about his wife and having his wife there to be ready to pivot. Right. And I titled this show "It's Time to Pivot" because pivot was all about Justin's brand and what he's doing and what he stands for. But I don't want us to miss. He said, like, this is the thing about him that I learned just in a couple quick conversations. He says stuff quick, meaning like subtle. He says powerful things, very subtle. That last thing about his wife, there are so many people out here today struggling in marriage or in finding marriage, whatever it is. To the married people out there, I want to kick it with y'all and just really be real, especially the younger married people. You have to find a way to go from being a competitor to a teammate. And I think what happens in marriage is that it's easy to allow yourself to be a competitor. Not to romanticize their relationship because I don't know their relationship like that, but just taking it off this one example, you go through ups and downs in life. And when you're with someone and they have a dream or, something they're going after, they may be successful. And it's very easy to be with someone when the business is generating millions. And you really find out who people are in your life, though, when you go through the valley with them. And not that you ever really want to go through the valley. None of us do. But you become better for it. And in relationships, the reason I'm saying is is because so much of what we see in relationships and the information and content that's out there on social media, it's all romanticized. It's all about finding someone successful, or I know what I bring to the table. What do you bring to the table? And all these little like novel things that are like very interesting to me, having been in a relationship that's gone through a bunch of ups and downs, you know that in reality it's very hard to try to like, you know, like be so definitive about something like, oh, if you lose all your money, I'm gonna leave you. Like, no, when you get in a marriage, you're looking for a partner where y'all can grow together. And it takes both of y'all trying to figure out how to be there for that person. The fact that his wife stayed, you know, but look at the pivot. He's able to recreate that success. So you may be in a down time in your life. You may have had some failures, but the thing about failure is that you don't lose the experience of the success. So whenever you fail at something, if you got enough experience from it, then the failure isn't a waste. A wasted failure is only a failure that came with no experience. Like, hey, you failed and then you can't even remember how you built it in the first place. But no, he pivoted and went into something else. The other thing, this idea of he talked about, you know, his experience in corporate America. And I've been asking people today on Facebook, actually, like, you know, what advice would you give someone trying to grow a career in corporate America? And I think what happens for so many of us who don't come from a background of, you know, regardless of what color you are, what community you come from, if you come from a background where you don't have that experience or exposure, you tend to go off what you think. The Bible says there's a way that seems right to a man, but the end thereof is death. And I always look at that different ways of like, when we don't know, we create the way in our mind. And we go off what we think, but what we think isn't necessarily right. And so ultimately, it becomes super important for you to surround yourself with people who have been there, who have experience, mentors. Justin talked about the beginning of his corporate career, you know, having an individual that pulled him aside. And I'm gonna tell you, man, you can't do it on your own. But you also can't do it if you want to only go off what you think. I had somebody pull me aside. I was walking in my office. I've told this story on a podcast before. I used to go in and out of my office. This is probably back in like 2013, let's call it. I go in and out of my office, kind of didn't talk to people that much, like kind of did what I had to do. I was a high performer though. But the problem was this individual, this executive, his office was at the front. He saw me walking in one day. He said, come here, close the door. Older Black gentleman. And I actually ran into him last year and thanked him. He's retired now. I ran into him at a charity event and I pulled him aside. I reminded him of him pulling me aside. And I said, thank you for doing that. And you know, when he pulled me aside, he wasn't telling me stuff I wanted to hear. He pulled me aside to tell me about how I needed to improve and how I was isolating myself by not coming in and networking and having conversations with people, and how no one really knew me. He said, you're probably doing a great job, but no one knows. And because he told me that, I then spent the next 7 or 8 years from there trying to specifically and intentionally build a brand in corporate America where people knew who I was, where I networked and they knew the value of what I brought to the table. And then I understood that through that exposure, that then I started seeking more mentors, which also mean I had a lot more correction coming my way. My point with this story is that so many of us have created an environment in a world where we don't want anyone to critique anything that we do, and we stunt our own growth. If you want to grow in corporate America, if you want to grow as a business person, you are going to have to put yourself in the uncomfortable position of hearing critical feedback about your current performance, your current habits, your current mindset, and also what it takes to get to where you aspire to be. Those are the two things to me that I look for in mentors is, hey, how do you feel about what I'm doing today? What do I need to improve? And then secondly, this is where I want to be. How can you help me get here? How did you get here? And in order to grow, it's going to have to become about more than you. Going through life thinking you got it all figured out, man, it ain't worked for you this point. It's funny to me on social media. Sometimes you can make a post about something, and people with the strongest opinions haven't experienced what you're talking about a day in their life. It's like, bruh, if you haven't experienced what I'm talking about, how you gonna tell me? So we got to humble ourselves, to allow ourselves to be able to hear feedback from people if we want to grow. But then we also have to create value. So when you're a person and you saying, how do I become a high performer? Well, today's show is about it's time to pivot. And what I want to tell you is, like, Justin's podcast is called the Pivot Mindset Podcast, right? So it is a mindset shift. And so he outlined earlier that the pivot is really about a mindset of gratefulness. What's my point? He said everything that happened to him is the best thing that ever happened to him, even if it was bad. So I want to challenge you today. You might hate your job. You might hate your current situation. You might hate the community you came from. You might have every legitimate excuse not to do well. You may have every legitimate excuse to give up, to complain, or to quit. But I want to challenge you today to pivot in your mind. You need to start looking at your situation different before it's ever going to be different. And the thing with some of us is we look around for something to change before we change our mind. Justin said some powerful things today, man, about the idea. You imagine losing your father at 12. I mean, some of you could relate to that. We all have problems. This is why, for me, the reason I don't like the victim mentality, because all the victim mentality does is highlights my problems over yours. It says, because I'm from the hood, I lived the worst life ever. Well, it's like, well, okay, we had Jay Viana on the show last week, and he was born in Brazil and said it was pretty normal to walk outside with your shoes off. I'm gonna tell you right now, I would have got blazed in the hood if I came to school in some fake J's, let alone barefoot. So it's a tricky thing in life to start trying to elevate your problems against others. But I want to help y'all here. I see this a lot on social media. People don't know how to live in reality. They don't know how to live in a reality of we all have problems. And because you want to elevate your problem to be the worst, you meet the next person that's not where you from, and they want their problems to be worse than yours. So you have this counterproductive interaction because y'all just arguing about whose problems are the worst, versus what I believe the biblical approach should be is, hey, Jesus was the example for us all. He died for me. He went on that cross, whether you black, white, rich, poor, yellow, brown, green, whatever you are, Chinese, Indian, Arab, Chaldean, it doesn't matter. Jesus went to that cross for you. So my blackness may be a real thing. It may have created real challenges in America. What I don't want is I don't want people to be dismissive of that. And I think a lot of people are dismissive because everything has been politicized. So you don't know how to hear somebody who just saying it as reality. Like, oh, I'm not saying it for you to vote for nobody. I'm not saying it to be mad at you. I'm just saying it. But here's the second part of it. I'm also not elevating it above your problems. So I believe as believers, I should be able to come to you, talk to you about the challenges I have. But then comes the important part. Then I need to be quiet and listen and learn from you. What have you gone through? What are the things in your life that could have stopped you? And that is the pivot mindset. It's time for us to pivot from this racial tension, Democrat, Republican, and I know some of that you can't escape because it's just the world we live in. But I'm talking about in the kingdom of heaven, in the body of Christ, like, bruh, like, you a believer, I'm a believer. We genuinely believe in Jesus Christ. I'm talking about to the true believers out there, right? Not somebody who towing a line, not somebody who playing with the word. Like, it's clowns out here. So one thing about me, like, listen, bro, it's some clowns out here. I'm just tell you that. I'm gonna be 100% with it. Like, it's a lot of clowns. Clowns aside, genuine believers should be able to have those discussions. We should be able to learn and hear from each other to make us better. And the victim mentality doesn't allow that. Justin talked about how some of his, biggest opportunities in corporate America came from people who didn't look like him and weren't from where he was from. And if you're in corporate America long enough, you realize that simply somebody sharing your skin color does not automatically mean they're going to love and support you, or that y'all personalities or beliefs or viewpoint are the same, or that y'all mesh. Like, it's a bunch of cool Black people where I work, and it's a lot of Black people that our personalities don't mesh. You being Black and from the hood, and the other thing is, when you start meeting Black people from all over the country, everybody ain't from the hood. And that's so there's so many nuances and levels to going out and diversifying yourself, whether you white, Black, Chinese, whatever it is, especially to those of us in America where we can freely cross over and meet people. Like, some of us are in willing segregation. Like, we are just willingly segregated. There's nothing stopping you from going and visiting that church, or going and shaking hands with that person, or having that conversation in a line at Walmart. But because we have such a segregated mindset, we've been trained to look at people a certain way and pigeonhole them based on what they look like. And the problem with that, I've experienced this a lot in my life. The problem with that is just that it's stupid. I'm gonna just say it like that. It's just stupid because it doesn't make sense. I remember me and my wife, like, this was 2021, actually. It was just a random night, because this is like 2021, the world this would be January 2021. So the world is kind of open, kind of not, some, whatever, still coming out of the pandemic. It was a random night. We just wanted to get out the house and drive. So I got in the car and we drove, like, whatever. It don't matter what we drove. But we were looking busted. I'll say that. Like, I'm gonna be real with you. We were looking busted. What's up, Bree K? How you doing? Thank you for tuning in. Love your music, love your production and everything you do. God bless you. And we were looking kind of busted, and we just wanted to drive around, but we got to this certain dealership, and it was kind of like, oh man, they had a car I liked. So I wanted to go in and kick it, but my wife looking like, yo, we looking like we weren't planning to, how you weren't really planning to do nothing, and you kind of like, I'm like, well, we about to go in this car dealership, and we looking like whatever. We went in there. I stood there for 5 minutes, legitimately. And I stood there because I wanted to see how long. Legitimately for 5 minutes. Let's say 3 minutes, because sometimes, you can exaggerate time because it feels longer. Let's say I legitimately stood there for 3 minutes in the middle of this dealership. Literally salespeople. One dude is a manager. Keep in mind, I've already bought a car from here before. So this is the part. Like, I don't look familiar to them because how I'm looking. But I know their faces. So I'm just watching people walk past us, not say nothing to us. Now, keep in mind, we don't even got to take it to Black. Like, let's just throw Black out the window. I'm just saying how I looked, how I presented myself. They were judging us. And what they were thinking is, yeah, my man, they don't look like they about to buy no car in here. So we stood there for a few minutes. One dude finally comes up. Now, this dude is standing in front of us, talking to other people, everything. He finally walked up to me, asked whatever. And then I'm like, yeah, told him the situation. And then he kind of pointed me to the other guy, which is the guy. This is the funny part. The other guy is the guy that I have bought a car from before. And my man was like, he was like, hey, what's going on, man? I was like, yeah, I want to test drive this car out here. He like, oh, like, again, looking at me like, all right, whatever. Then he asked for my name. Which means he went over there and put it in the computer. And within 10 seconds from taking my name, going and put it in the computer so I could test drive this car and coming back with the keys, it was like, oh, Mr. James, how you doing? Yeah, da-da-da. I'm like, yeah, yeah, that's, how you doing, sir? Yes, I already had, like, yeah, I've purchased the car from you before. So I don't know why. What I'm saying is that when you judge a book by its cover, you make yourself look stupid. Because to me, he looks stupid. To me, I'm like, you look dumb right now. Because you're so used to what, like, listen, I work in sales. I've worked in sales for 15, 16 years. You can't, the brokest person can have the most money, and the person that's swagged out can be the brokest. So it's best for you to treat everybody the same, or have at least a little better discernment. And My point with all of that is that's what we do to each other. We treat each other differently based on, oh, who is that? Like, that's why it's like, that's why I'm gonna just be real with you. That's why I really be chilling on social media. I don't really be posting all this personal stuff, good or bad, because it's kind of like some of y'all gonna look at me different if I drive a nice car versus if I don't. But what if my car just regular, but I just got the greatest content ever? Or what if I had a nice car today and then I like sell it tomorrow and I don't have that nice car tomorrow? Like, what if I like live in a condo? What if I live in a mansion? Like, why does it matter? Like, my point is that bothers me. Like, that people are so like limited in their thinking that we literally value people based on things. It's time to pivot that. We're talking about changing your mindset today. My goal with this podcast is to continue to consistently press you to think differently, to not be like the rest of the world just because everybody else does it, just because everybody else believe this or think like this. Don't put me in that box. I'm gonna just tell you right now. Like, if you don't know me and you think you could just see me and see what I look like and know what I think, like, nah, it's not gonna happen. And I'm gonna be real. Sometimes even compliments can kind of feel shady because I don't know, based off certain people, compliments somebody might give me for 5 minutes after talking to me, like, oh, you seen this guy told me yesterday, like I was somewhere interested in buying something. He's like, 5 minutes in, like, oh, you seem like you really know your stuff. I'm like, yeah, I do though. Like, but you didn't think that though, because I came in here with my hoodie on under my leather coat or pleather, whatever that coat is. I don't know. It might be pleather. I think it say vegan leather when I bought it. What's vegan leather? The cow didn't eat meat? I don't know. I don't get it. What's vegan leather? Anyway, look, today was an amazing show. Thank y'all for watching and tuning in. Hopefully, if you just tuned in, you'll catch the replay on YouTube. Please do subscribe to our YouTube page. It's just at Inspire Guys People. If you go to YouTube and type in at Inspire Guys People, you're going to find it. Also to my Apple Podcast family, my faithful Apple Podcast and Spotify family, thank you for listening on audio. And to my Facebook family, man, always much love to y'all. Thank y'all for checking out the show. Look, pivot your mindset. Thank you again to our guest, Justin Carter. It was an amazing conversation. Thank you for taking time to come and share your wisdom and your experiences with me and God's people over here at Inspire God's People. We appreciate you. And look, man, share the show with somebody, y'all. If you enjoy this, if you like it, you know what I'm saying? Don't be secretly liking this show. That's what I want to tell y'all real quick before I get out of here. Stop secretly liking it and openly like it. Share it with somebody. Tell somebody about it. Subscribe to the show. I appreciate y'all, man. Y'all have an amazing night. Inspire God's people.